the arms business, the weapon manufacturing business, is really home to such a wide array of companies. Some of the smaller companies would make, for instance, just handguns. Smith & Wesson, for instance, would be an example, the Italian company Beretta. Very well-known names, but in terms of the quantum of what they produce, they're actually fairly small. But you also have really almost informal companies who are making parts, components, or taking the parts and components from other companies and putting them together. So you have a very, very wide array of companies. And they are incredibly difficult to control. First of all, because not all of them are even registered. So that's the first difficulty. Second of all, once they are registered, there is no jurisdiction in which, because they're in this particular industry, they are perhaps overseen more than a company that's producing widgets, for instance, that don't go to make weapons. So there is, of course, the very real danger that the smaller and less formal players are going to fall under the radar. And here I think what is absolutely crucial is one has to look at the whole regulatory environment. And my argument would be that we have quite stringent regulation of industries that are seen as, for instance, being harmful to people's health. So the alcohol industry, the tobacco industry would be two obvious examples. The weapons industry, which, and I don't remember who made this statement, but somebody once said, the weapons industry is an industry in which the profits are measured in billions and the losses are measured in lives. And the reality is that because of the impact of this industry, I would argue that it should perhaps be more highly regulated than any other industry we know. And I think it is essential that the smaller, even the informal players, be brought into a regulatory environment in the countries in which they operate. That's easier said than done, but I think that should certainly be the objective. In addition to which, I think it is extremely important that journalists, non-governmental organizations, writers focus on not just the big companies, which are sometimes easier to research, but also those smaller, less formal entities, because it's in that way that they will actually get greater public disclosure about what they're involved in.
One final question. When you were elected to Parliament, did you ever imagine that you would become a crusader for transparency and accountability in the arms trade?
I always had the sense when I went into Parliament, because I had an economic and finance background, that I would be involved in the sort of the economic and financial side of government. I have to be completely honest with you, when I first went to Parliament in 1994, I didn't know what a Public Accounts Committee was. I had no idea about this accountability infrastructure that existed within legislatures. And once I had a sense of it, I became very enthusiastic about its work. But I certainly never imagined that I would land up researching an industry like this. In fact, my wife constantly says to me, why don't I do work on something else that I find interesting, like soccer or cricket?